They say data doesn't lie. But in the world of global logistics, where millions of dollars vanish in the gap between a spreadsheet and a forklift, data is often blind. You are about to hear the story of Marcus, a man ignored by the suits in the glass tower because of the color of his skin and the vest on his back. But when a billion-dollar algorithm crashed, he was the only one with the code to fix it. And he didn't learn it in college, he learned it on the concrete floor. This is how one warehouse worker walked into a boardroom and dismantled the entire corporate hierarchy. Before we dive into this incredible turn of events, make sure to hit that subscribe button and smash the like. It helps us bring more untold stories of the underdog to light. Now, let's get to work. The sound of a modern fulfillment center is a specific kind of chaotic music. It is the rhythmic beep 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 of RF scanners, the groan of conveyor belts stretching miles long, and the squeal of rubber saws on polished concrete. For Marcus, a 50-year-old shift lead at Apex Logistics, this was the soundtrack of the last 20 years. Apex Logistics was a titan. They moved freight for 3 of the largest retailers in North America. Their hub in Memphis was the beating heart of the supply chain. And lately, the heart was skipping beats. Marcus adjusted his high-visibility vest, wiping sweat from his forehead. He was a large man, broad-shouldered, with gray peppering his beard. He didn't just work the floor, he understood the floor. He knew that Bay 4 had a slight incline that caused pallets to drift if not chock-blocked perfectly. He knew that the morning shift loaded trucks heavier on the left side because most of them were right-handed. He knew the physics of the warehouse better than the physics engine in the software that ran it. That software was called Logimind. It was a new, AI-driven inventory management system implemented 3 months ago by the new CEO, Elias Thorne. Thorne was a visionary, or so the business magazine said. He was young, white, Ivy League educated, and obsessed with a frictionless automation. The problem was, Logimind didn't account for friction. It didn't account for the human element. Marcus sounded a voice over the hum of the sorter. It was Brad, the floor manager. Brad was 24, fresh out of a supply chain management program, and terrifyingly confident in his ignorance. Why is line C stalled? The dashboard says we have green lights across the board. Marcus pointed a calloused finger at the massive jam of boxes near the spiral chute. The dashboard is lying, Brad. The sensor at the junction is dirty. It thinks the belt is clear, so it keeps feeding boxes. But the boxes are different sizes. The irregulars are catching on the guardrail. The system says irregulars are routed to line D, Brad argued, tapping his tablet. The system doesn't know that the diverter arm on line D has a half-second lag today because the hydraulics are cold, Marcus said calmly. I told maintenance. They're backed up. So, I rerouted the heavy irregulars to the manual sort station so we don't blow the motor on C. Brad looked at his tablet, then at the jam, then at Marcus. You overrode the algorithm? You can't do that. That messes up the predictive analytics for the whole quarter. If I didn't override it, that belt snaps in 10 minutes. Then you have zero analytics for the whole day, Marcus replied, turning back to his scanner. Brad huffed and walked away. Marcus shook his head. This was the daily battle. The disconnect between the digital twin, the virtual version of the warehouse the executives looked at, and the dirty, heavy, complex reality of the physical world. 2 weeks before Black Friday, the unthinkable happened. Apex Logistics pushed an update to Logimind intended to optimize a last-mile density. The goal was to pack trucks tighter to save on fuel. On paper, it was brilliant. In practice, it created a gridlock so severe it threatened to bankrupt the quarter. The system began ordering pickers to retrieve items in a sequence that made mathematical sense for cubic volume but physical nonsense for human movement. It had workers running from aisle 1 to aisle 50 and back to aisle 2. Fatigue set in. Pick rates plummeted. Then, the loading dock froze. The system had instructed the loaders to build walls of boxes that were structurally unsound. Pallets were collapsing inside the trucks. Drivers refused to leave. By 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, the Memphis hub was at a standstill. Trucks were backed up to the highway. Up in the Skybox, the glass-walled executive suite overlooking the floor, CEO Elias Thorne was watching his career disintegrate. He was surrounded by 3 VPs and 2 expensive consultants from the firm that built Logimind. Why aren't the trucks moving? Elias barked, loosening his tie. The algorithm is recalibrating, a consultant said nervously. It's learning the new density protocols. It's not learning. Elias shouted, pointing down at the floor. It's dying. Look at them. The workers are standing still. Elias Thorne did something CEOs rarely do. He left the Skybox. He walked down the 4 flights of stairs, swiped his badge, and entered the warehouse floor. The heat hit him first. Then the smell of cardboard and diesel. He walked past the frozen conveyor belts. He saw confusion. He saw fear in the eyes of the temp workers. Then, he saw motion. In the far corner, near the manual sortation zone, one line was moving. Fast. Elias approached. He saw a black man in a faded vest standing on a crate, directing traffic like a conductor. You. Stacker 2, take the heavies. Ignore the light. Just stack, the man yelled. Runner, grab the irregulars, throw them on the skid, we'll wrap them later. Scanner, don't scan the pallet, scan the manifest. Bypass the cloud check. Elias watched. It was messy. It was loud. But the boxes were moving. The truck at that dock was being loaded. Elias stepped closer. Excuse me, he said, his voice barely audible over the machinery. Marcus turned around. He recognized the face from the company newsletter. The big boss. Mr. Thorne, Marcus said, stepping down from the crate. Sorry about the noise. We're trying to clear the backlog. Everyone else is stopped, Elias said, gesturing to the silent facility. Why is your line moving? Because I turned your system off, sir, Marcus said bluntly. The VPs, who had scurried down behind Elias, gasped. He disabled the node. That's a fireable offense, one of them hissed. Elias held up a hand. Explain. Your system is trying to play Tetris, Mr. Thorne, Marcus said, looking the CEO in the eye. But boxes aren't pixels. They have weight. They have dust. When you stack a 40-pound box of cat litter on top of a case of light bulbs just because the math says it fits, you get crushed glass. The loaders stopped because they didn't want to be responsible for the damage. I told them to load by weight and stability, the old way. Heavy low, light high. It's not efficient for your computer, but the truck is leaving in 5 minutes. Elias looked at the loaded truck. Then he looked at the frozen screens of his multi-million-dollar investment. What's your name? Marcus King. Marcus, Elias said. Be in the boardroom. Monday morning. 9 a.m. Sir, I have the morning shift, Marcus said. Not anymore, Elias replied. Monday morning at Apex headquarters felt different than the warehouse floor. The air was filtered, scented with lavender. The silence was heavy. Marcus wore his Sunday best, a charcoal suit he usually saved for church. It was a little tight in the shoulders. He carried a notebook, not a tablet. When he walked into the boardroom, the conversation stopped. There were 12 people at the long mahogany table. 10 white men, 1 white woman, and 1 Asian man. They were the board of directors and the senior logistics team. Elias Thorne sat at the head. Everyone, this is Marcus King. He's the reason we managed to ship 15% of our volume last Tuesday instead of 0%. A few polite nods. A lot of skeptical stares. Marcus, Elias said. We are discussing the rollout of Logimind 2.0. The consultants say the crash was a black swan event caused by user error. They suggest more training for the floor staff. One of the consultants, a man named Peters with rimless glasses, spoke up. Mr. King, while your improvisation was helpful, it disrupts the data integrity. If workers override the system, we lose visibility. We need strict adherence to the protocol. Marcus stood up. He didn't sit. He felt more comfortable on his feet. Can I speak freely, sir? Marcus asked Elias. Please. Mr. Peters, you talk about visibility, Marcus began, his voice deep and steady. But you're looking at the wrong things. You track the box. You don't track the person moving the box. He walked over to the whiteboard. He picked up a marker. I've been in that warehouse for 20 years. I've seen SAP, Oracle, Red Prairie, and now Logimind. Every time you bring in new tech, you try to turn the worker into a robot. But we aren't robots. Marcus drew a crude diagram of the warehouse floor. Last week, the system sent a picker from aisle 4 to aisle 50. That's a 400-foot walk. Then back to aisle 6. Why? Because the algorithm wanted to prioritize shipping speed for a premium member. But by making that guy walk a mile for 3 boxes, you tired him out. By 2 p.m., his error rate went up 20%. He started mispicking. That caused returns. Returns cost 3 times as much as shipping. The room was silent. You look at units per hour, UPH, Marcus continued. But you don't look at a dwell time. When a packer has to wait for the computer to decide which box size to use, that's 3 seconds. You do that 10,000 times a day, that's 8 hours of lost labor. The machine is slower than the human eye. So what are you suggesting? A board member asked, intrigued. We go back to pen and paper? No, Marcus said. I'm suggesting you let the people teach the machine. He flipped his notebook open. I wrote this down over the weekend. It's a hybrid workflow. Let the AI handle the inventory forecasting, it's good at that. It knows we need more umbrellas when it rains. But keep the AI out of the last 100 feet. Once that product hits the sorter, let the floor leads control the flow. We call it dynamic zoning, Marcus said, using a term he'd read in a library book but applying it differently. Group orders not by customer speed, but by warehouse geography. Let a picker own 2 aisles. He learns those aisles. He knows where the loose tile is. He knows which bin is sticky. He moves 30% faster because he has muscle memory. Then, consolidate at the dock. Peters, the consultant, scoffed. That creates a bottleneck at consolidation. The simulation proves it. The simulation assumes the consolidator works at a constant speed, Marcus shot back. It doesn't account for the flow state. When a team is in sync, when they aren't fighting the computer, they work faster. I proved that last Tuesday. My line cleared 400 units an hour. The automated lines did 0. Elias leaned forward. Marcus, you're talking about decentralizing command. Giving authority back to the floor leads. Yes, sir. You hired them for their hands, but you're wasting their brains. There's a kid on the dock, Hispanic kid named Mateo. He figured out a way to stack pallets that saves 10% of the cubic space just by interlocking the patterns differently. The software forbids it because it thinks the weight distribution is off. It's not. Mateo knows it works. The software is guessing, Mateo is holding the box. Marcus put the marker down. There is a disconnect in this company. It's not between software and hardware. It's between the penthouse and the pavement. You want to fix the supply chain? Stop looking at the screen and come look at the sweat. The room was quiet for a long time. The air conditioning hummed. Finally, Elias Thorne stood up. He looked at Peters. Pack your things. The consultancy contract is terminated effective immediately. Peters' jaw dropped. You can't be serious. You're listening to a warehouse worker over data scientists? I'm listening to the only man in this room who actually moved a box last week, Elias said coldly. Elias turned to Marcus. We're not going to implement Logimind 2.0. We're going to build something new. And I want you to lead the team. I don't know how to code, sir, Marcus said. I have 100 guys who can code, Elias smiled. I don't have anyone who knows what you know. I'm creating a new position, Director of Operational Reality. You report directly to me. You have veto power over the engineers. The change wasn't overnight, but it was radical. Marcus didn't move into an office. He kept a desk on the warehouse floor, but he wore a different badge. He formed a floor council, a group of veteran workers, including Mateo and the cynical Brad, who learned to listen. They worked with the coders. They taught the programmers that a fragile sticker meant something different to a human than a camera. They tweaked the algorithms to account for fatigue, for morale, for the physical reality of the work. 6 months later, Apex Logistics posted its quarterly earnings. Efficiency was up 24%. Employee turnover, usually a massive cost in logistics, dropped by 40%. The workers weren't burning out because the system was designed around them, not the other way around. But the biggest change was cultural. The suits started visiting the floor. Not to inspect, but to learn. One afternoon, Elias Thorne walked down to Marcus's desk. The hub was humming. It was a smooth, continuous flow of commerce. You know, Marcus, Elias said, watching the trucks depart. The board was terrified of you. They thought you were going to unionize the place and shut us down. Marcus laughed. I didn't want to shut it down, Elias. I wanted it to work. That's the thing about us workers. We take pride in the job, even if the job doesn't love us back. We just needed you to stop tying our hands. Elias nodded. We're rolling out the Marcus protocol to the European hubs next month. I want you to go to Berlin. Marcus looked at the busy floor, at the people he had worked beside for decades, now working with dignity and rhythm. Berlin sounds nice, Marcus said. But let me check with Mateo first. I think he's got a new idea for the container loading. The supply chain isn't just trucks and computers. It's people. In a world obsessed with artificial intelligence, Marcus proved that nothing beats real intelligence, the kind earned through sweat, observation, and experience.